Yeah. Welcome back to Truth Hurts, where we expose corrupt politicians lying corporate media. I'm Jake Duesenberg, your host, broadcasting live from Roseville, Minnesota, in the belly of the beast, the liberal zombie apocalypse of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Joining me, as always, Mega Jesse. How you doing there, buddy?
Doing good. Yeah, we got a lot of important things to get into. We'll be talking about Tim Walz meeting with Soros, Alex Soros, which is George Soros' son. We will be talking about some Minnesota GOP money problems where we're seeing them have very little money, yet they spent all this money in Republican districts against conservatives so that they could help out their incumbent rhinos. We'll be doing an interview with Cliff Mahoney, and we'll be doing our after show where Paul might be telling us some good things about CD2.
Yeah, that's the after show. How you doing there, Paul?
Yeah, we got some, I don't know if that's a rhetorical question or not, but I did get a flat tire on my way in. Consequently, I have no wings from Quinny's Sports Pub and Grill, which is really disappointing. So if anybody is watching and they say, boy, I really want Tushy to get some wings, you're welcome to swing over to Quinny's Pub and Grill. Just shoot us a comment or shoot me a message if you have my contact info, and I can have them cook up some wings for me. You can bring them into the studio and meet the whole crew.
What? Oh my God! You almost make it sound like it's Quinny's fault, just the way you put. Okay,
I never said it was Quinny's fault. I said, what did I say? What did I say?
You got a flat tire.
I got a flat tire. Consequently, I wasn't able to pick up any wings on my way in today.
Okay, you didn't say it that time. You gave it like a little context, like it was. Oh man! All right, how you doing there, Deep State Dawson?
Well, I'm doing better now that I know that I could just say, hey guys, go and get me some wings from Quinny's and bring them here, and I will eat them live on air.
Well, we don't know if that's going to actually work out.
I know you can say that if you have a sponsorship deal with Quinny's. I don't know if you can say that if you don't have a sponsorship deal with Quinny's.
Yeah.
You know.
Darn good wings at Quinny's Pub and Grill. Let's get right into it. Oh, God, I always say that. Let's get right into it. We do have to talk about our sponsors. Warren Wessel of Keller Williams Realty. If you're buying a home or selling a home, give my good friend Warren Wessel a call at 612-419-7453. This is a guy who believes what you and I believe and is a damn good realtor. He's my realtor. That's how I know he's very good at what he does. And if you're buying a home, give the good guys at John Galt Mortgage Company a chance at financing your home. You can go to johngaltmortgage.com. You can go to Facebook, Twitter, and follow them. They believe the same things, and they aren't afraid to say it, which I love about it. It's not shocking. It's in the name of the company, John Galt Mortgage. If you know about John Galt, you know about Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. So go to johngaltmortgage.com, and also brought to you by Alpine Cabinetry in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Okay, now let's get into it. If you want to interrupt at the same time, hit that Rumble rant. We'll read your comment live on air. This is go to A1 here, Dawson. This is posted by Alex Soros. Does everyone understand at this point that George Soros has basically put his fortune in the hands of his hyper-political son? Like, George Soros is evil and bad enough, but his son is like the hyper-political one. Mm-hmm. He looks like a scrawny neck, what was I going to say,
Dweeb.
Gamer, but I don't want to offend Dawson over there. Not all gamers are the same. Plus, Dawson's.
I think he looks quite dapper in these pictures.
Do you?
Even if he's the devil, he looks good in a suit.
There you go. Click on that one there to the left. This is him. These are just two middle-class family guys, right? I guess social distancing, keeping 6 feet apart. I don't know. Is COVID still a thing here in New York? Maybe it is. The New York, that's run by a now federally indicted mayor, which is a story in and of itself. Anyhow, this is Alex Soros showing him his home to Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz. Now, obviously, we know why. I mean, it's a fundraising event. They're doing a big fundraiser for Kamala Harris. Let's go to the Daily Caller. This is A2. Tim Walz dropped into Soros's house for a fundraiser. I'm wondering, actually, if it's the first time they met. Oh, we got a
Rumble ran failed candidate. So Soros gave $125K to the MNDFL.
Is that true?
I believe so. I think I saw something like that already.
I wonder if it's in the federal account or the state account. What do you think it is? I actually did not know that.
Would failed candidate know where it is?
Failed candidate might know where it's at. I'm going to look it up right here on the fly, because we're going to get into state accounts later on. What's he say?
125K known.
Yeah, well, no, that's a great point.
Says.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. He's definitely spending more in Minnesota than just what's going to the DFL. But that is actually really interesting. I'm just going to look this up real quick. Central. You can go to cfb.mn.gov. This is their September account. Let's just look if Soros is in here. Here we go. Yeah, George Soros. So not Alex Soros. George Soros of New York, in April of this year, gave $25,000 to the DFL State Central Committee, and then on July 30th, $100K directly to. Now this is the state account, so this means money that could be used to take over the Minnesota House or keep the Minnesota House for them. Mm-hmm. Interesting stuff. Look at that. I didn't even know that.
Right, and I'm even seeing it in the Minnesota Reformer, and everybody knows how George Soros is essentially, he's Biden. He's out to lunch. That's why his son is taking control over it now, because his Soros is whatever years old, and so he's got this radical
like
son
90?
that's on top of it. I mean, people can look it up for themselves. Even as all of this has been out there, he met with Kamala Harris a year ago. Kamala Harris is 100% willing to tie herself to the George Soroses. I mean, Soros is basically the Koch brothers, but so much worse. The Koch brothers were, of course, these corporatist billionaires who wanted to control politicians and get their tax breaks and whatever else. Soros is so much worse because Soros is, funding these district attorneys that are allowing criminals to run rampant on the street. Soros is the one who is, funding all of these state legislatures to get rid of self-defense laws, all kinds of things. And one interesting thing that the media does is they criticize anybody who criticizes the Soroses and says that you're anti-Semitic if you do so, despite the fact that they're atheist. How could you be an anti-Semite if you're criticizing an atheist? So there, and especially if we want to say that George Soros is a Jew, why was he a Nazi then? He was the one who was rounding people up in Germany, and he can argue that he had to do it to survive. But sometimes when people are in those moments, they can either be a hero or they can be a villain. Soros has chosen to be a villain for his life.
Well, he's ethnically Jewish, and that's the interesting thing about that religion is there's ethnic Jews and then there's Jewish people by practice. Dawson being by practice, right? So would you still consider him, even if he's an atheist, a Jew?
I don't. Is he an atheist? Do we have that anywhere?
Oh, yeah.
Where does he say that?
Well, go check it out. He said it in plenty of interviews.
Well,
yeah, well, let's just assume. Hey, since the argument, let's assume he is, but he's ethnically Jewish. Would you consider him Jewish then?
Yeah. You'd be Jewish. You have to be, so ethnic Judaism follows your mom, and it has to be, I think it's 2 generations removed from practicing Judaism before you are no longer considered ethnically Jewish.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you can lose your Jew card, but it's like generational.
You said it, not me.
Here we go. I got a source that I think Dawson will be acceptable with. The Times of Israel says that Soros is an atheist.
Okay.
A self-avowed atheist.
What do you mean by follows your mom?
So when, like, if you're religiously Jewish, then that goes with your. If your mom is Jewish, then you're Jewish. If you were born while she was Jewish, right?
Oh, religiously, but not ethnically.
Ethnically, it's debated everywhere because nobody can come up with a single definition. But that's as far as I know.
Bill Dings' mom asks, isn't Dawson also ethnically Jewish? No, he's just boring white like us.
I'm ethnically like French and German or something.
You don't even know?
I know it's mostly French. Maybe I know there's a little bit of German.
Does that not explain so much right now? Sorry, Dawson.
Scuba McSalty said they all follow the Talmud. They're atheists because they follow Baphomet, not God. Yeah, I was going to bring the Satanism into it at some point. So, yeah. Like, Jesse's over there. He's like, he's an atheist. I'm like, he's a Satanist. What are you talking about? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I do see Scuba McSalty's on top of it.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I think he kind of views himself kind of as the one who wants to be controlling things. He wants to view himself as a god. So I think that, I don't know what he would actually define his religious state as other than atheist at that point then, because really it's all about power and individual glory for himself.
Well, it's how you define it to the public or how you would admit it to yourself
right.
What you really are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, going back to the story, we keep hearing about how we need to make these guys pay their fair share, these billionaires and the wealthy billionaires like Donald Trump. And it's like, well, you're going and meeting with this guy in his high-rise apartment in Manhattan. Like, I'm pretty sure
out of touch.
I'm pretty sure Alex Soros is taking deductions on his taxes. So is he
George
paying his
Soros.
fair share? What's that? What'd you say?
George Soros.
Did I
Alex
say
Soros?
George?
Well,
Alex?
it says George, but you said
Either
Alex,
one, whatever.
right.
By the way, George is 94 years old, so he's definitely old. Democratic vice presidential nominee Tim Walz fundraised at Alex Soros' home on Monday, according to a Pool report. The fundraiser took place at the Manhattan home of Alex Soros and his wife. I forgot about this. You guys remember this? Who his wife is?
Mike.
Former
not Mike Weiner. Anthony Weiner's ex.
former top
Yep.
Hillary Clinton aide Huma Abedin. According to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal reported in June 2023 that Alex Soros had taken over the philanthropic and political empires built by his father, George Soros. Quote, I'm more political, the younger Soros told the WSJ in 2023, comparing himself to his father. As much as I would love to get money out of politics,
Says the billionaire.
as long as the other side is doing it, we will have to do it too. There's no one believes that bullshit. Reports did not disclose who was in attendance at the Walz fundraiser at Soros' home, nor how much was raised. The Harris campaign did not respond to the Daily Caller News Foundation request for comment.
Right.
You know,
and when Kamala met with him, the VPs, presidents, they all have their schedules, publicly available. For whatever reason, her meeting with Alex Soros was not included on that public schedule. I'm not sure if the same thing can be said about Tim Walz, if this was something that he put together on his own or if the campaign organized outside of the public view. But, it's obvious that he's going there to, prove that he is willing to be a slave to the Soros agenda, to the Soros machine. Walz is proving that he's willing. I'll do whatever you guys tell me. I'm a globalist too. I love the World Economic Forum. I love China. So they got everything in common. So once they realize, okay, this Tim Walz is going to do whatever we tell him to, we'll give him whatever amount of money he needs.
And look at his submissive posture too in that photo of them standing there in front of the window. It's just interesting. But that's Tim Walz. Now, this is an interesting story. This is A3 Dawson. This was reported this week. George Soros was also in the headlines. According to Fox News, George Soros closer to controlling 200 radio stations despite objection from Trump-nominated FCC commissioner. The Federal Communication Commission seemingly approved a deal that would fast-track left-wing billionaire George Soros' acquisition of more than 200 Odyssey. How do you say that? I use that app. Audacity?
Audacity?
No, it's
I can't see.
Radio stations across America irking a Republican commissioner who, quote, objected. The New York Post first reported that FCC last week adopted an order to approve Soros' purchase of more than 200 radio stations in 40 markets just weeks before the presidential election, potentially allowing the far-left kingmaker to reach more than 165 million Americans at a critical time. Okay. First of all, I don't think he's buying it. Audacity? No, it's not Audacity. Odyssey.
I'll take your word.
Yeah, whatever. You've seen that app before, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. Obviously, you don't just take over control of these radio stations right before the presidential election and immediately impact them, right? Like, what is there, a mass email and all these people get in line right away? I don't think it works that way. It's a long game. He's playing the long game. And by the way, he's 94 years old, so his long game lives through Alex, right? At this point. And he's got other sons too, by the way, but Alex is the one that took over. So he is actually trying to build his own media empire. Now, this obviously happens on both sides, right? Like Rupert Murdoch's got quite the media empire. But George Soros
speaking of which, actually, Sky News Australia, I'm sure you've seen more of them popping up on your YouTube feed and everything. They got that Indian lady that's one of the hosts of the channel there. But Sky News Australia, I was looking at, I go, these people are always saying conservative things. I wonder what's going on here. So I start digging into the ownership. Of course, who does it always come back to? You just said his name. Fox News guy. Rupert Murdoch.
Rupert Murdoch, yeah.
Yeah, Rupert Murdoch is the guy that owns Sky News Australia. So, people will be looking at something and thinking, oh, look, there's a foreign international source. It's just Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing as Fox.
Well, that's why we need independent new media, right? That's why we're doing this project. That's why a lot of people are doing these projects, because it's good to have independent news media, and we're not controlled by pharmaceutical companies, military industrial complex. We're controlled by our supporters, because if we didn't have you guys, what would we be doing? We'd be just talking to ourselves. And then luckily we have good companies who are also supporters and people that follow the show, like Warren Wessel and John Gall Mortgage Company and Alpine Cabinetry. You know, the day I start reading a Pfizer ad on this show, all right, you stop listening, okay? Unless I do it for fun. I might do it for a skit. Let's go to Tim Walz. We should be doing a Tim Walz segment on every show at this point, right? I just think it's so interesting to watch. Scroll down here. This is Tim Walz's newest tweet. Families should have the chance to get ahead, not just get by. Kamala Harris and I have a plan to help new parents afford the basics like diapers and a car seat. First of all, why can't people afford diapers and car seats right now? Why?
Inflation.
Why is there inflation? Because you guys spend recklessly and use the printing press to buy up the government debt so you can spend recklessly. And meanwhile, when you have more money injected in the economy, not backed by anything, it creates inflation. It's their fault. But this is precious. This is why I think we should talk about it, because we know Tim Walz's record better than anyone. He wants up to $6,000 for parents of newborns, up to $3,600 per child by restoring the expanded child tax credit. Do you know what Tim Walz could have done in Minnesota?
Right.
He had a $20 billion budget surplus, the massive budget surplus, larger than any ever in the history of the state. And all he gave us back was $260. They could have given $8,000 per taxpayer back. Just if they took that whole surplus, the money that was overtaxed, and gave it back to us, it would equal almost the amount he's saying right here. Mm-hmm. And they didn't do it. They gave us $260 back. Everything went to more government spending and paybacks to the unions. So this guy's such a con artist.
Right. And of course, he lied when he was campaigning for governor, said he was going to give out $2,000 checks. Of course, that wasn't true. So, people shouldn't be surprised when he's making these grandiose plans out there now, promises, because they're never going to come through.
Right. And remember, they blamed on Republicans why the $2,000 checks didn't happen. It's like, but you guys are in charge.
Yeah.
Joke. This is another one by Tim Walz. We were talking about this in the pre-show. He writes, this is yesterday, if somebody draws up a playbook, they plan on using it. We've seen all the crazy plans Trump and Vance have in their Project 2025. Kamala and I have something better to offer. Check out our playbook for building an opportunity economy. Playbook, he's the coach, That's not the right. It's the tweet below that. Oh, yeah, that is right. I'm sorry. I didn't see it. Okay. Anyhow, I posted back at this, or retweeted, or quote tweeted, whatever. I'm not great on Twitter. This is Tim Walz on September 12th this year. He wrote, on every issue that's most important to you and your family, Donald Trump has no plan for you. Which one is it, Tim? Is his plan Project 2025, or does he not have a plan? Like, this guy talks out of both sides of his mouth. But we know this. We live in Minnesota. We've been on this guy for a long time. This gaslighting over and over again that Project 2025, but they can't even stand. They can't even stand point. That's the funny thing, is this gaslighting that Project 2025 is Donald Trump. But at the same point, I guess 2 weeks ago, the messaging told them, say, well, he has no plan for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he said he has no plan for you. I hate to play devil's advocate for Tim Walz.
Oh, go ahead, play.
He says Trump's plan is 2020 or Project 2025. He has no plan for you. Then it's like saying he's got this plan for all his people and for whoever else Project 2025 benefits, but it's no plan for you. It's no plan for the people who can't afford diapers.
Oh, because it's like not for the little guy kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, you're the guy that said that somehow it's subjective whether Ron Kreischer is the only conservative in 10A, right? And like, how is that not a lie? Like, how is it not a lie?
Well, meaning it's in the eye of the beholder. I actually understand your point very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, Tim Walz is always standing up for the little guy. That's why he goes and meets with Alex Soros, right?
Yeah.
This is interesting. CNN actually fact-checked Tim Walz. What did they find that he said was not correct?
Yeah, go ahead and pull up that link there, Dawson. And because, I was shocked to see this. Go ahead and scroll down a little bit until scroll down. I'll tell you when to stop. All right, there we go. So the first section there, Trump Project 2025 and pregnancies. So this is CNN writing it. They say, Walz claimed in a speech in North Carolina last Tuesday, quote, and now Trump is going to try to create this new government entity that will monitor all pregnancies to enforce their abortion bans. He made this even more dramatic in a claim in Wisconsin on September 14th, saying, quote, think about what they're saying with Project 2025. You're going to have to register with a new federal agency when you get pregnant. Facts first, okay? So this is where CNN drops the truth bomb. They say Walz's claims are false. Project 2025 does not propose to make people register with any federal agency when they get pregnant, and there is no indication that Trump is trying to create a new government entity to monitor pregnancies. So then we'll go down to the next section there. They talk about Vance's comments on power. In a speech on Saturday in Pennsylvania, Walz said, quote, "My opponent, Senator Vance, had a quote that you read it, you heard it, you gloss over it, but think about how deeply disturbing it is." He said that when they get power, they will use Project 2025. They will be ruthless when it comes to the exercise of their power. Facts first. Here we go. CNN added again. Walz's claim is false. Vance never said they will, quote, will use Project 2025 in this comment about ruthlessly exercising power. In fact, Vance made the comment before Project 2025 was even created. He said that in May 2021. And then the last one, Vance's reaction to interest rate cuts. In the Saturday speech in Pennsylvania, Walz said, quote, "We saw Senator Vance lead an audience when he said, well, they reduced interest rates this week. How terrible is that? And he got the crowd booing. Who boos lower interest rates?" Here's the facts. Walz's claims about Vance are false. Vance did not respond to the Federal Reserve September rate cut by saying, how terrible is that? And he did not goad the crowd into booing the cut either. Instead, what he said, let's see, in the North Carolina crowd independently started booing after a reporter asked him for his reaction. Vance started responding by saying, well, look, here's my reaction. The crowd started booing. He paused briefly. Vance then said that the Fed's half-point reduction wasn't enough to make up for the inflation families have been facing under Biden-Harris's era. But he also said it's better than nothing. So Vance did not offer particular enthusiastic reaction to the rate cut, but did not decry the cut as Walz claimed. So Walz is getting to the point where he's becoming such a big liar that even CNN doesn't want to cover for these lies anymore, especially on Project 2025. I mean, Project 2025 became an invention of the Democrats after the debate. After Joe Biden got crushed in that debate, the Democrats realized they needed something, and it was Project 2025. So that's why Walz, Kamala, they have to continue to talk about that, even though Trump's real agenda is Agenda 47.
This is a breaking story. CNN fires lead fact checker at the company. So it looks like they've solved this issue.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I got to help out a little bit more. That's fake news. By the way, fake news. Razzle-dazzle, I see your comment. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, I got to move on to the next say maybe the post show a little bit, because Razzle-dazzle says anything to report on the Royce White campaign. There does not seem to be
I got to move on. Hey, touche.
Yeah, but we can. I'm just going to say post show. I think Razzle-dazzle
maybe on the post show. Yeah,
I spoke with Royce White yesterday, so I got some. So I got some news that we may put for the post show.
Perfect. We'll get it on the. I'm sorry to rush it, but I got to cover the story, and then we got Cliff Maloney joining us at 1:30, so I got to get the story. This is this. You're not going to hear this anywhere else, by the way. Well, you're going to hear about some of the news stories on the finance reports, but not from this thing. This is at truthhurtsnews.com. If you want to see the trail of documents, this is Minnesota Democrats tower over GOP in cash on hand leading into final month of election.
Thanks to Alex Soros.
No. Thanks to a lot of people, right? Yeah, Soros helping them.
Yep.
This is how bad it is. Okay, I'm just going to put it this way. Remember, the Minnesota Democrats have a trifecta: the House, the Senate, and the governorship, okay? So you would think Republicans, by the way, they've gone so extreme to the far left, you would think Republicans should raise money against this, right? To many of us political observers, it seems like GOP Chairman David Ann is purposely running the Republican Party in the ground in Minnesota. Democrats have a state government trifecta and are out fundraising the GOP by leaps and bounds. According to the newly released financial reports, the GOP has only $38,533 in cash on hand leading into the final month of this important election cycle. Meanwhile, the Democrat State Fund account has a whopping $2.1 million ready to be utilized for mailer staff, door knockers, media buys, etc. to keep the Democrat trifecta in power. In fact, the DFL State Central Committee raised $3 million since June. Han, on the other hand, has only raised $29,000 since June. They literally have no branch of the Minnesota government, and since June, and that includes the state fair, they have only raised $29,000.
That includes the state fair where they were selling all their items. So in other words, that's probably all the money they got from selling shirts, buttons, whatever they were selling at the fair.
Yeah.
And if that's what they raised, they probably lost money on their total,
Correct.
between the items and the staff and the booth or whatever.
So in other words, when you look at the state accounts of the MNGOP and the DFL, we call it DFL in Minnesota, it is 55-1 favoriting the Democrats. 55-1. That's the advantage.
And then when Republicans, like the HRCC, does have money, what do? They don't spend it against the Democrats. They spend it against Republicans in red district primaries.
Well, they do both, but certainly are doing that. So this is you can look right here at the transaction summary. You can go to cfp.mn.gov and you can look up the report yourself. But this shows total raised just in their state coffer is $296,000 this year. And they're ending with, and they've blown through more than that. They've actually spent pretty much every dime, so they only have $38,533 left. It appears the majority of hands' focus for fundraising has been in the MNGOP's federal account, which is money designated for federal offices like the 8 congressional seats and winning the U.S. Senate seat, which is up for grabs. This money could also be used to help Trump win in Minnesota. Despite raising $3 million in individual contributions in that account, the MNGOP enters the final stretch of the election with only $673,767 cash on hand. That's what they have to win 2 competitive CD2 and CD3 races and attempt to beat Senator Amy Klobuchar.
I don't know. I think there's a lot wrong with that last sentence. First of all, I don't think CD2 or CD3 are competitive. But that could be arguable.
Yeah,
but
well, that's what they're spending money on.
But also,
right?
that's not what they have left to beat. That's what they have left to pay their staff. Don't they have like 17 staff or something like that? So all the people, I mean, this 600,000 or whatever. David Hand makes like 10 grand a month or more, 12 grand a month, whatever he makes as his salary, right? And so how many? I mean, he's got more months of salary. They don't have 600,000 left to play in these districts.
Well, they're
not competitive anyway. But you could assume
the staff is going towards that, right?
What's that?
You could make the assumption the staff is going towards that objective.
Well, David Hand doesn't know shit about winning elections, so I fail to see how paying him all that money does anything to win those seats.
Well, let me give you a comparison. Meanwhile, the Democrats have $4.4 million cash on hand, and they've been bringing in $7.5 million in individual contributions, right? So in this case, not as big. It's not a 55-1 ratio, but you got a $4.4 million to $673,000 difference. And I mean, by the way, Amy Klobuchar's campaign fund's very plussed up, and so is what's her name, Angie Craig. The House Republican Campaign Committee (HRCC) is at least more competitive with their counterpart, the DFL House Caucus, and that heads-up comparison. The Democrats have $3.5 million. And the GOP has $1.63 million cash on hand. That's still a 2-1 disadvantage for the Republicans. By the way, it's probably still going to be close.
And you say it's not that big. It's not as big of a difference, the 2 million versus 600,000 or whatever. But in a way, it kind of is. I mean, it's like if you make 60,000, you make 200,000 a year. Like if you make the 60,000, it all goes to your expenses, your mortgage, your car payment, your utilities, right? You got nothing. You got make 200,000 a year. Well, you got similar expenses. You might have slightly higher mortgage, slightly higher car payment or whatever, but you got another extra $100,000 to play around with. So yeah, 600,000 to 2 million. It's like, oh, it's not that far apart. Yeah, no, they have. There's all these fixed expenses that these parties have, and so I mean, a lot of that goes to fixed expenses.
All right, you got a story here about the HRCC on actionforliberty.com, Jesse. Let's talk about that.
Sure, yeah, go ahead and pull that up there, Dawson. We can discuss this. Nearly $35,000 was spent for unendorsed Rhino incumbents, and there you can see them right there because all three of them were getting plenty of attention. Of course, Rhino Ron Krisha, Brian Johnson, and his name just slipped my mind.
Are you talking about Davids?
Yeah, Greg Davids, my bad. Yep. So go ahead and scroll down, Dawson. The first thing I want to point out here, go ahead and show all of those names right there because those are the names of the Republican representatives or candidates who are giving money to the HRCC either before or after the primary when we know the HRCC is using money to spend, using money against endorsed candidates or going, just protecting the incumbents who are in there. Even if these incumbents are doing nothing to help the Republican Party, even if they're doing nothing to help their district, even if they're doing nothing for the conservative movement, all of these people are giving tons of money. So Go ahead and scroll down a little bit further there, Dawson, because, yeah, that just shows all those people there. But upon review of the HRCC's Campaign Finance Board September 2024 report, nearly $35,000 was spent against was spent for 3 rhinos and against 3 conservative candidates. So in the
2 of which were endorsed by the party.
Right. In the case of Ron Krisha, that was $16,160.11 spent just on him. So that goes to show that, and that was the closest primary within the entire state for the state house. And the fact that it got that close with just a grassroots patriot running against someone who's got, nearly, got over $16,000 being spent for their behalf, it shows that Diane Webb-Skillings did a very good job and was very competitive in that race, and that Ron Krisha would have stood no chance without the HRCC. Then we can look at Greg Davids, who also barely won his primary, and they spent $3,333.33. And then, of course, Brian Johnson. They spent nearly $15,000 for Brian Johnson, only to lose that primary. Jimmy Gordon is the guy who defeated Brian Johnson. Go ahead and scroll down. It'll be interesting to see how he operates within the legislature. But according to this post, it doesn't seem like he is going to be forgetting about what the HRCC did to him here, because he says in that post, establishment rhino Republicans at the HRCC desperate to retain power. He talks about how he got something in the mail that said that he wasn't a conservative. So that'll be very interesting to see how that ends up working out. One more thing, go ahead and scroll down there, Dawson. The HRCC is also caught, using this money. They say it's for event supplies, but they're going shopping. They're going grocery shopping at Sam's Club. They're going to Total Wine, which doesn't necessarily shock me. I mean, it is unfortunate that a higher level of politicians compared to the general public are alcoholics. Julie Whiteclaw Blaha and Dan Walgamot and that gay they Brian Curran, they all know that very well, that politicians are more susceptible to becoming alcoholics. So, and that was just 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago. The HRCC, after the primary, they're going to Total Wine and buying a ton of booze for themselves and partying it up. I don't know what it was for, but
Probably, I don't know, maybe a fundraising event.
Oh yeah, I mean
that's most likely what it was, Jesse.
I mean, they bought it after the primary. It's a little crazy to me. If you have to, get people drunk to be able to donate to you, I mean, you probably don't have that great of a message.
Now I want to play devil's advocate on this one. Jeez, and as we host a party or an event here tonight,
I don't think that when candidates are giving money to the HRCC, or if individuals are giving money to the HRCC, I don't think that they're expecting their money to be wasted on alcohol. I would think that money should be spent on mailers. I would think that money should be spent on door knockers. I don't think it's needed to booze up politicians. Maybe it's just me.
Well, it's probably to booze up the donors more. Well, obviously the politicians, it's a fringe benefit for them. But no, I mean, I know Jake was going to play devil's advocate. No, they have fundraisers coming up. They have a fundraiser coming up on Summit Avenue here on October 15th, I think it is, and so they'll have a lot of big donors come in, and I think they're asking people to give $500 to the HRCC or $100 to each of different candidates that they're promoting at their event. So, I mean,
well, alcoholics everywhere should know to attend.
Yeah, well, people show up. Yeah, you could have, if there's somebody that's hosting this party. I mean, they could make the host of the party buy the booze. That's another way to do it. But who knows? Maybe the host of the party is giving a ton of money to the HRCC.
Tucker says Jesse has never seen pull tabs at the bars. I agree with Jake. Yes, pull tab investment. Let's bring in Cliff Maloney, my friend from Pennsylvania. Cliff is running something called the Pennsylvania Chase. This is interesting. Cliff, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you all having me. Glad to be with you.
Absolutely. I hate that hat, by the way. This is terrible, terrible hat. You're on a Minnesota show.
I got to play to my
you?
audience here. I got to play to my audience.
Okay, there you go. All right, I want to read a story from Politico. You've probably seen this. It's called "The Actual Electoral Map is 3 states. If the former president wins the East Coast trio of Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia, he will go back to the White House." It's actually interesting. North Carolina is even considered a toss-up right now, but we all know the dynamics. But essentially, we've been saying this: Pennsylvania, Georgia goes to Trump. It's over. If Vice President Kamala Harris can't carry Pennsylvania, her only hope is on a Southern strategy. Harris must win either Georgia or North Carolina. She has no other path to the White House. Election could well be determined when polls close in the Eastern time zone. Cliff, is this your read of how this election is going to go?
Yeah, I think that the path for both candidates, if they're able to pull in Pennsylvania, it becomes much easier. And honestly, if you lose Pennsylvania, the path for both Trump and Harris becomes extremely difficult. I mean, even Nate Silver, who I tend to not agree with on policy, Nate Silver says, listen, if Trump wins PA, he has a 96.1% chance of winning the White House. And so, when we launched this PA Chase program, Jake, I had no idea, if Pennsylvania would be that relevant, maybe number 5 or 6 on the list. This is ground zero, right? This is where the election will be decided. That changes cycle to cycle. But right now, I think that's why they hosted the debate here. I think both teams realize this. And I think it's why you see both Harris and Trump spending so much time in the Keystone State, because this is where they win the White House.
Well, it's not just that the American politicians are paying attention. Let's go to the next exhibit. Was at the C2, Dawson. Apparently, it's drawing the attention of the leader of Ukraine. Here's a video. This is the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, and then Bob Casey, the senator, clapping, looking really awkward. He looks so awkward in that picture. Look at how he shakes Zelensky's hand. There's Zelensky, Ukrainian's president / comedian. They're signing bombs. They're signing bombs that are made in Pennsylvania, funded by you and me, in an obvious campaign stop. I believe Zelensky even spoke ill will about Trump. I mean, he knows where the gravy train is. It's on the Democrat Party funding this Ukrainian war. So it's drawing the attention not only of the politicians in the United States, but Zelensky's putting it on the map.
Yeah, and I think this goes to show you the left is absolutely not the party of peace anymore. I can't find a mainstream anti-war Democrat if my life depended on it. And so, yeah, I think they're pulling out all the stops. Bob Casey, it's funny you call him awkward and weird. He's kind of the politician that could win 10, 20 years ago before social media, before you had to interact. He's kind of just had his dad's coattails for years. But he's actually in a race that's going to be tough himself. I mean, Dave McCormick, I didn't think Bob Casey was beatable 2 years ago. But he's in a neck-and-neck race there as well. And look, any of these polls that are coming out, they're within the margin of error. But luckily for us, I look at polls as kind of the third most important metric. Number one being votes, obviously. But the second one being mail-in requests. And, when we look at the numbers, we feel very optimistic. We're tracking this like hawks. We're looking at this minute by minute because all that's public data. And so when we look at the returns coming back, we feel very confident about the potential for Trump to win in PA.
What's the are they doing it on a daily basis that they're updating these numbers?
Yeah, so right now we're getting both registration and the mail-in requests weekly. The numbers I'll share with you that are, giving us hope. Kamala is just completely underperforming Biden in terms of where he was in 2020. Now people say, Cliff, there's a pandemic. All these lefties go nuts on Twitter, and especially the Republican establishment, calling us out and saying that we're cherry picking. Well, compare it party by party. I mean, both parties had the pandemic in 2020. Right. It wasn't a different environment for different parties. And so the Democrats are down about 360,000 mail-in requests. And for anybody out there, let me just give you the basic rundown. In Pennsylvania, you have to request a ballot. Anybody can, it's no excuse, but you do have to request it. We don't just send out ballots to all registered voters. And so what I'm saying is you look at how many Democrats requested a mail-in ballot at this time in 2020 versus now. They're down 360. The Republicans, we're only down about 70,000. And so if you look at the delta, that's a 290,000 mail-in request margin that we're better off compared to 4 years ago. And so I don't care about the pandemic because we know that those that have a mail-in ballot are much more likely to vote. So Democrats now have to spend more money, more time, more energy, more infrastructure on getting those 290,000 net, or we'll say 360,000 that haven't requested it, to now make sure they show up, which was the problem Republicans have had because we haven't touched mail-in ballots. We focused on Election Day. And the example I give, Jake, is if you're in a sales competition and you say, hey, I'm going to focus on one day, the last day, but everybody else gets 50 days to do their sales, you better have a heck of a day on that last day to pull it off. That's changed in 24. We are now focused. We are doing any type of way to vote, make a plan, And I think it's going to be the difference, especially in Pennsylvania.
Well, and Trump himself was saying, right, do not vote early, vote on election day. So it's not just that there wasn't a strategy. It was like literally the candidate himself saying, go vote on election day. I think something that he's realized was a mistake. And so to me, it's like, okay, if Pennsylvania is the most important state out there, I don't know if there's any argument. Do you think there's any argument on that, Jesse? You look at this.
No, I don't think so. And, I do have one quick question for Cliff. Those were some good stats comparing it to 2020. I mean, if we look at 2022, Pennsylvania had a rough election with Doug Mastriano. What would you say the numbers are looking like in comparison to 2022? Was it just a low turnout Republican year in 2022 in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, let me give the raw numbers, then we'll talk percentages. So in 2020, Biden had 2 million mail-in votes. I'm not talking requests now. So Biden had 2 million mail-in votes compared to Trump's 600,000, but that's a presidential year. There's COVID, et cetera. 2022, look at Oz and Fetterman, because that was a real race, right? Mastriano, very much underfunded. Josh Shapiro, more money than God, et cetera. In 2022, Fetterman had 1 million mail-in votes to Oz's, let's say, 200,000 and change. So there's that huge drop-off. So a lot of people are looking, saying, okay, what is it going to look like in 24? So now let's go back to requests, comparing 2022 to 2024. Democrats are up 19% if you look at 2022 this time compared to today. Republicans, if we're wondering, did they learn their lesson, we are up 85% from where we were at this time in 2022. Once again, talking requests. So, yeah, there's a shift. Both parties have increased because of the drop-off during the midterm, coming out of COVID. But I think those are all numbers to look at. And we're not going to win mail-in voting, right? I want to be clear for people that hear me, like, well, you guys have this huge program. Are we going to win? No, the cultural differences are still problematic. And let me explain that timeline, because I think most people, Trump included, myself included, this was the environment or the culture that was created. In 2020, we all said, don't vote by mail, way too much potential for fraud, vote on election day. 2021, we said maybe the courts will fix it. They didn't. 2022, we said, hey, well, the lawmakers might fix it in Pennsylvania. Well, we lost the state house in 2022 by 1 vote. So they didn't change anything. In 2023, we got our ass kicked. And we said, okay, what do we have to do to change here? Because we can't just forfeit the election because we don't like the rules. And so those are the types of things that I look at. I think the numbers are moving in the right direction. But the nice thing for us is the variable I don't control is the Democrat mail-in votes, right? The Democrat mail-in requests. And so they've kind of handed us a gift in that their energy and their requests are so down that it's made us, even just staying close to where we were in 22 and in 20, extremely valuable. And Jake, one thing I'll do that nobody ever does is I'm going to give you a public number for everybody to hold me accountable to. Republicans in statewide elections, Republican candidates versus Democrat, typically have an average of 20% of the mail-in share versus the Democrat 80%. Our whole PA Chase program, 120 full-time chasers on the ground right now. They've been out since September 1. We're knocking 500,000 doors, talking to Republicans that have a ballot. Our objective is to take that 20% and increase it to 33%. If we do that, we can't lose PA, and we fix the problem. We've totally just changed the culture and the ability for Republicans to compete. But last point I'll make on that, if we get to 25, 26, 27%, Trump could still win. Don't get me wrong, but I don't want to just have a Band-Aid here or a temporary solution. If we get to 33%, we fix it. I want to keep that bar there. And if we get even close to it, we cannot lose PA. That's what I'm aiming for.
Well, I think this is very similar to what you hear about, like, the African-American vote, the Hispanic vote. It's that Trump's not going to win those, but he's taking enough of that traditional block of voters away from the Democrats, or Kamala in this case, and that alone is going to swing the election. We're talking about, tens of thousands. What was Pennsylvania? What was the margin in 2020? It was, tens of thousands?
80,000 votes.
80,000. Yeah, we're talking about well within the margin of victory. And by the way, 2020 historic election, right? The majority. I mean, like, I know in Minnesota it was the highest turnout ever, or at least since World War II or something like that. I'm guessing Pennsylvania was the same way.
They claim our turnout was 79.96% in 2020. That's what the Secretary of State claims.
Yeah.
79.96, 80% turnout.
By the way, that's Liberty Longbeard You guys go back, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, can't miss that face.
Okay. So let's talk about what's going on in the ground here. First of all, the Pennsylvania chase utilizing door knockers with a bias. Should I be saying this? A bias towards Liberty District stuff like that. Areas where probably would get more bang for the buck. Is that correct?
Yeah, so here's the breakdown. When we first looked at this, I'll give you a couple of the parameters I set as a Liberty guy. I've never done the Team Red stuff. This is new territory for me. And so I did have a couple, riders on my agreement that I needed to get some folks to agree to when we were asked to do this. Number one, I said, well, let's look at the numbers. Is this even possible? And what was crazy to me is there's one stat I want to share with your audience. Trump lost by 80,000 votes, but this is 2020. There were 141,000 Republicans who requested a mail-in ballot and never sent it back. That was like alarm bells going off. Like, hold on a second, what? 141,000 of them who went through the process of requesting it, they never sent it back. Well, why didn't they? Because the Republican establishment failed. Ronna McDaniel had no plan. Nobody talked to these people, right? There were no full-time ballot chasers. Sure, there were the grandmas that went out on Sunday or Saturday afternoon for 3 hours, which we love, we appreciate, they make a difference. Democrats are serious people, right? They're hiring full-time canvassers to go out and pound doors 6 days a week. That's the strategy we're matching. And so I want to say that it really isn't about, how many volunteers you get. That's padding the numbers. But Democrats have a full blitz operation that we have to match. Now, back to your question of where we're targeting. Trump and all the other statewide candidates, they love us. We're knocking 500,000 doors, and guess what? They're on every ballot. So they're agnostic to where we knock because we're turning out their voters. So my second thing I said is, look, the data's there. I don't want to get involved in the project we can't succeed at, but let's really focus on who we're helping down ballot. And so pretty much we've targeted, there's 203 state house seats. And so we are spending our resources on Liberty legislators that are tested, that are vetted, that are interviewed, and that are going to fight against the rhino establishment. And we're running up the numbers in their districts. So if you look at the priorities, obviously the statewide tickets, they benefit from every door we knock. Below that, we want to flip the state house by helping Liberty candidates get across the finish line in some of these general elections. Another priority we have is Scott Perry. Scott Perry is former Freedom Caucus chairman, by far our best member of the federal delegation in PA, and he's a top target of the DNC. We think they're going to spend 10, if not $20 million to try to take him out. And he is a very tough opponent. So we've been able to kind of finagle where we are in the state. We have 10 Airbnbs throughout the state. 3 of them are legitimately in Scott Perry's congressional district. So you figure 30% of our entire effort is focused on making sure Scott Perry gets reelected. So yes, this is a Liberty program. We've got ideologically aligned activists that care about the principles. That's always been my brand. It's always been Justin Grice's brand. And so we're just figuring out a way to mold this that helps our people, but gets us national attention and national support, because obviously at the top of the ticket, you have a Senate seat and you have the White House. And Pennsylvania, I truly believe, will decide those.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All right, so I don't want to go through the polls. We've gone through the polls a lot. Everything is neck and neck. It's very close. Although I would make an assumption that Trump is once again going to outperform the polls like he did in 2016, 2020. So maybe he's the leader. But the current polls show him maybe with a slight advantage in the Sun Belt. Okay, looking like he possibly wins Arizona. Looks like he wins Georgia. So then the big stuff in play right now is the upper Midwest. And they loop in, I don't consider it upper Midwest, but they loop in Pennsylvania because it's somewhat similar, I guess, to Michigan, Wisconsin. I guess Minnesota is not really considered in the battleground states. So I don't assume the issues are the same over there. What are you guys seeing at the door? What is motivating people right now in Pennsylvania?
Well, I'm going to say this, and it's probably not good fodder, because it's not going to be sensationalism. It's pretty boring. These are the simplest doors we've ever knocked. And here's what I mean by that. If we're in a primary where we back a Liberty candidate trying to take out a rhino scumbag, that's tough at the door, because a lot of times they're incumbents, and a lot of times you're trying to get a Republican to, who voted for the incumbent before, to not vote for them. It's a lot of advocacy issues. trying to really create a narrative to explain how this Republican is better than that Republican. And even in typical general elections, we're talking to swing voters, right? If we're backing a Liberty candidate in a general, that's none of this, right? This is going to the door of somebody that has a ballot sitting there and saying, Bob, you've got a ballot. We need you to vote Republican up and down the ticket. Can you confirm that you're going to send it today? And here's what the Democrats, this is, by the way, we got a hold of their whole playbook. And people think it's kind of like, oh, well, why do you say you're stealing their strategy? Because it's honest. That's what we're doing. We're not rewriting this. This isn't some rocket science that, we're creating. They go to the door. They ask them, will you vote today? We track all the data when they say yes. And 7 days later, we pull the report from the county clerk. And if they haven't voted yet, guess what? We go back to the door. Right? And you knock again. Bob, hey, this is Cliff. I'm back here. We checked with the clerk. Your ballot's not in. Do you mind sending it? We know you said you would. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, we're working. I'll get it. Look, was busy. I'll get it in. It's the simplest conversation ever, but people need that ping, that reping.
But what's motivating these guys? I mean, obviously, if they're demotivated, they haven't sent in the ballot. What motivates them? Is it the economy? Is it the border? Like, what is the issue that's really getting these guys moving?
Yeah, and I got to be honest, I actually give credit to Trump. I a month and a half ago was worried that we'd struggle to define Kamala Harris. I think a lot of people, there is fear there. They fear her policies. I don't mean fear mongering, but they fear kind of what would come of America if she's in. So yes, the border's a major issue. Inflation, economy, putting food on the table. I mean, there's nothing new here, right? Those have been the issues. Obviously, the border is becoming an issue. So yeah, we'll talk about those when we're at the door. But most of these voters, they're motivated to vote for Trump. It's just getting them to vote. And this is why I have an issue with a lot of the polls. The rules have been changed in so many of these states. The voters are out there. It's not necessarily even convincing your voters or convincing somebody to support Trump. And the same thing on the left. They're not even convincing somebody to beat Kamala. You're just trying to get your votes and run the score up. I mean, think about this. In our lifetime, Republicans have always been the high propensity voters. That's always been the case. Republicans take Election Day seriously. Our voters are much more higher propensity to vote. This is the first time, if you look at 22 maybe, but definitely in 24, this is the first time ever that the more people that vote, the modeling is showing it's going to help Trump. Meaning a lot of these Republicans are now, they changed the rules. And when they changed the rules, obviously the Democrats adjusted. And so a lot of their low propensity people, because of the new rules, are now the most likely to vote. And so I just share with people, a lot of this is not even advocacy anymore. It's just the Democrats in their training call it the power of annoyance. That's literally what they talk about. Is in sales, they say you got to have 7 touches to be able to make the sale. That's how the Democrats are running their elections. Go back to the door, send them a text about their mail-in ballot, call them, send them a postcard, go back to their door again. That's the strategy. It's not so much the advocacy. Obviously, they have to be motivated on certain issues. But this really becomes just a turnout game, but it's not just Election Day turnout, right? It's getting them to vote any way possible, and I think that's the name of the game.
All right, I got a question that's going to be a little bit outside your wheelhouse, but humor me. But before we move to that, what is the website so people can learn more about the Pennsylvania Chase?
Sure, pachase.com, and if folks want to download our app, they can make phone calls, send texts, postcards remotely. It's just PA Chase in the Apple or Android store. And Jake, my plug here is if anybody wants to sponsor a full day of ballot chasing for one of our ballot chasers, it's $175. Every dollar goes directly towards their pay, their housing, their gas cards. We don't take any commission. None of that goes towards my salary. But that's at pachase.com if folks want to be a sponsor.
Okay, awesome stuff. And I know I've talked to you a little bit. We got some donors over here in Minnesota like, hey, we want to help out in Pennsylvania. All right, you're obviously very much doing the smart work, right? Okay, in politics, a lot of people talk about the independents. Oh, it's about where's the undecideds going, It's like sometimes it's really about getting your base out there. So kudos to you for understanding that and doing a good job. However, there's got to be tens of millions of dollars spent, I don't know, maybe a day every week for certain, probably every day, because everyone reads Pennsylvania as the top state. And there's, I don't know, 3 to 5% undecided, whatever the hell that means. There are undecided people in Pennsylvania right now. They don't know how they're going to vote from now until Election Day. And so you got all this. What are you seeing on TV? Because in Minnesota, okay, I mean, we turn on the Sunday games. We see a couple Kamala commercials, okay? We see those most likely because they're reaching into Wisconsin. You know, we've got the Western Wisconsin market. You see some bumper ads on YouTube, maybe some of the other streaming services. You might even see some Trump stuff. But for the most part, you're not getting ads here in Minnesota, right? Pennsylvania has got to be where every dime is being spent right now. What do you see messaging from both Trump and Kamala? What is working, or what is the perception that's working in Pennsylvania right now?
Well, first I'll say this, just to be honest with everyone. I think most people are reaching for their mute button on the remote. I mean, anytime I'm anywhere, whether I'm, at home in PA with my family, whether I'm at a hotel in PA, whether I'm at an event. I mean, yeah, it's kind of getting to that point. It was at that point with Fetterman and Oz where people are they're inundated, right? And they're shutting it off. I say Kamala's message is pretty simple. Trump is not for women's rights, and she is. And everything's about being anti-Trump, and we need, civility, and we need unity, and we need to moderate all the things that, I feel like her message of socialism is quite the opposite. It's all government coercion, government force. And I don't really feel like she has a plan, but it's just running as the anti-Trump, which I do think is a big problem for her. I think people underestimate this whole idea that she is in the White House. And I know we talk about it, but I do think that penetrates with a lot more of these so-called swing voters than people realize. It's like, I think that was one of Trump's best messages when he ran in 2016. You guys have had 30, 40 years. You've been in government. Why didn't you fix it then? So I think that is an issue for her, but that's her whole thing, women's rights, and she's anti-Trump. I mean, if I had to boil it down, that's the message. And it's all this milquetoast rhetoric that they're trying to get people to believe. Trump's message is the border. Trump's message is inflation. We also see some ads, dealing with the shooting, and some I would call them hero ads, which I think do pretty well. But I think it's more important, and I don't mean this like he doesn't have to have a positive message, but I think this whole election is about defining Kamala Harris, both for her and for Trump. And I do believe this. When she jumped in, I said this to anybody. I said, if Trump wasn't the nominee or if Biden wasn't, whoever the replacement was, I don't care if it's a bump on a log, they would have went up 5 to 6 points.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is just there's such a hatred. There's so much money that's been spent on why Biden's bad and why they think Trump's bad, period. I mean, there's billions of dollars. And so any alternative would have got that boost. I think she got it. She had her honeymoon period. I think that's leveled off completely. And now it is a race to define who she is. And I actually think the more time that goes on, she's going to continue to lose support, because I think anybody that is siding with her, they already have an opinion of Trump.
Yes.
And I don't think a lot of that's going to change. I think it's when people learn about her policies, or I should say lack thereof for a plan, I just don't think people are going to buy it. And the more they learn, the more they're going to have buyer's remorse, the more they're going to say, maybe we don't want the current 4 years compared to what we had under Trump. But those are the messages we're seeing on the ground in Pennsylvania.
By the way, that's my read, Cliff, as well. That's what I've been saying for some time now. Dawson, pull up C3.
K-Wall for Life said, just donated on phas.com. Keep up the good work.
There you go, K-Wall for Life.
Yeah, I've seen a lot. So I'm sure that obviously they had to dump Biden because they knew that. I mean, it was clear that he was going to lose. He was just too old, and people knew he wasn't with it anymore. But and maybe this was already a consideration, or maybe it was more of a shock. But what I have found, just talking with independent voter, Democrat voters, even older voters in my own local area, knocking for House candidates, is these people that are in their 70s, lifelong Democrats that were in the unions, carpet layers and city bus drivers and stuff. They were Democrats, because of the working class, and they don't like Kamala. Some of these people, I said, I voted for Biden. Biden was a, normal guy, they thought, but now he was too old. But Kamala is extreme. She's a communist. She's all these extreme things, and they don't like it. So they're losing. I think they're going to lose some of these older people, and maybe that's who some of these undecided voters are. They say, like, they maybe voted Democrat, but she's too extreme.
Yeah, I agree with that. Pull up C3 here, Dawson. This is, as of today, Real Clear Politics in the Battleground States. And just to kind of reemphasize how we started this conversation with Cliff, and this has been very good, good conversation, Cliff. Right now, it's got Trump, and by the way, this is all these are within the margin of error, I'm sure, of all the polls. But it has Trump up in Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia. It's got Kamala up in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nevada. So Pennsylvania within 1 point right now in Kamala's favor, which has been going down if you tracked it. Once again, this just emphasized it really comes down to Pennsylvania in this race, assuming, once again, Trump wins Georgia, North Carolina, which it seems like that's the trend. Well, it looks like so one person donated already. Appreciate that, K-Wall for life. Cliff, we're going to stay in touch with you in the next 42 days or something like that?
40.
Is it 40?
I'm pretty sure if my math's right, we're down to 40 now. Is it 40 or 41? I mean, we're getting close.
Don't know.
For us, it's every day.
Every day. There you go. Exactly. Well, we appreciate it. We hope Trump wins in Pennsylvania. We don't hope the Eagles do much of the same this year.
Go
but
Birds, baby.
Jeez. Someday we'll tell you about your fan base in Minnesota and why we are so upset with them. But hey, we're all Pennsylvania fans today. Thanks
Jake,
very much, Cliff.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to you, to Paul, to the whole crew. Action for Liberty. You know, there's very few groups out there that fight the good fight, get the message out. Obviously, the Democrats are the enemies, but the Republican establishment cannot get a free pass. So keep at it, gents, and we'll work to make Liberty win. Appreciate y'all.
Take care, Cliff. All right, awesome stuff. We're going to go into our post-show or after-show or whatever the hell we're going to call it. We should have a name for it,
North Carolina was mentioned. I have a little bit of gossip on North Carolina. I got a little bit of gossip on Royce White campaign and a little bit of gossip on CD2. So if you haven't subscribed to Locals now and get all the gossip on the after show.
All you got to do is go to Rumble. You click on Join, and on Join you can then be an $8 a month. $8 a month, is that right? $8 a month subscriber. Help support the show. Also, you get the gossip, the juicy gossip from Tucci, who's around the block in politics and other good stuff that we don't have on the show, because the show's we try to go an hour. Why is there a bug here? Bug on my screen. See, now we really need to go to the post show. I got bugs on my set. Anyhow, we'll be doing that here in just a minute. Thank you to our sponsors, Warren Wessel of Keller Williams Realty, John Galt Mortgage Company. Go to johngaltmortgage.com, and Alpine Cabinetry. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to our Rumble Rant, and maybe some of you guys will see us tonight at our event.
Bugs on the set. How come with the three of us, I'm the one that's drug free?
Oh, you got a bug right over your head now.
Right
there.
Sure,
see that? No,
sure.
no, look right there. It's right there. Why aren't you not looking?
I'll have whatever you're taking, Jake.
Okay.
Bugs crawling out of my skin.
It's literally right in front of you. Okay, whatever. All right, we'll see you guys in the post show. Everyone else will see you on Tuesday. Take care.